So good morning and thank you for staying back. We thought glass ceiling sessions are usually more interesting, but these gentlemen here have been breaking many glass ceilings and they have been raising the bar constantly. One group is trying to teach Indians how to fly, and the other group is teaching those who are flying how to fly behind the background, creating high-tech, state-of-the-art technology and design. So Scient and Indigo, we have a fantastic panel this morning, and therefore the way I have structured this is I'll just keep myself to a minimum of 2-3 questions for them just to set the stage for you, and after that it is all yours. So it is, we will spend more time for the time that we have, although we may not be Indigo standard time today, but we will try our best to keep and close little after 1 o'clock. And so to start with, what interested me is how you started in your speech, said capital is not a problem, human capital is a problem. And building a culture that sustains the human capital and builds the change is the problem. So in the context of your organization, and any one of you can pick up in Indigo, what kind of change are you handling currently? Could you sort of talk to us a little bit detailed about a particular change that you might be directing?
Sure. How about I'll start and then you can help me, Raj. So one of the areas where I have a lot of concern when we really want to work is that so Indigo is a very fast-growing company, and if you look at where we were 2 years ago, we were probably 50, 60 airplanes. Now we have 180, a lot more than 200 by the end of the year. And with that fast growth, the organization and the people of the organization, the way we operate, is really, I would say, appropriate for a very small business, but now we're becoming a very big business. And we have this, frankly, an amazing employee culture today, like no company I've ever seen, where the employees are incredibly committed to the company. They really love the company. They're so invested in the success of the company. It's a great relationship. But some of that, I think, comes from having a small business kind of mentality. Now, as we're moving to be a much bigger organization, the challenges really are, how do we maintain this incredibly strong employee culture as we move from a small company to a big company? And then secondly is sort of the talent around it, that we have to keep bringing in higher quality talent. It's not that we don't have good people, we have really very capable people, but as we grow bigger, we need more specialization, we need more people who have expertise in particular areas, and so we need to change the organization to bring in that kind of talent. And then what I talked about in my presentation before about how do we sort of really build an innovative kind of culture and one that's really focused on change. So those are the pieces that I'm really focused on right now.
Right. So it's about how do you scale up employee commitment, which is there when you had a small company mindset. Now that you grow big, could you sustain the employee commitment? Interesting.
The complexity of an airline and any industry will say the same in terms of complexity, and I've seen several industries. The complexity is it's not only about pilots and flight attendants. It's about 100 people that actually make a plane take off and land on time or ahead of time. And some of these individuals work in areas that are very, very niche, like operations research, revenue management, network planning, and there are others who ground handle your baggage and issue your tickets and help you board into the aircraft. Now, how do you engage? How do you keep a culture that's consistent across these variety of people that Greg just mentioned is very important, and how do you scale it up is the other one. One is building the culture, and I think Indigo is a phenomenal culture, and I've only been here 6 months, but how do you keep and scale it across a disparate, group of individuals. And two things that Greg and I talk about is, what do we do today and how do we get better at it tomorrow? And how do we also make sure that we continue to do good things that we do today? And for that, I think two things are very important. To be able to think long term, as the HR partner of the business, the leader of the business, can I think long term and bring certain things into perspectives? Now, many of you probably know that the biggest talent crunch in the industry today is our pilots. Even Boeing company says that they won't have enough people to fly your planes. In fact, there are research going on. Can you have pilotless planes? And will I be passenger in one of those planes? I don't know. But that's something I think HR as an organization, can think of today and solve for tomorrow. If I were to think of Motorola as a company and what could have saved that company from an imminent disaster that it went through was probably the HR leaders' ability to think and see who are hiring them. Like, there was not another Motorola type company that was hiring them, but it was another company called Apple. And then they brought in so much technology to kind of wipe things out. And today we are thinking of that similarly in terms of how do you acquire talent from pilots, and we have CAD programs to other trainers, and these are people that will be ready after about 7 or 8 or 9 years, when you don't have to go and hire people from outside. And then how do you bring in the culture and the elements that pertain to them, and how do you bring all these disparate ones? I mean, very interesting. I mean, I'm pretty excited about what HR can do in this industry, partnering with the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So beyond the scaling challenge, you see the finding of talent challenge. I hope you will create more pilots than to give up driverless aircrafts. Okay, so Cyient is a leader, our own home, Hyderabad leader, global leaders from Hyderabad, in very high tech, a rather quiet company for the fantastic stuff they do. And your world, the world of technology, is all about digital disruption. That's all we wake up to every day. So what kind of change are you handling in Cyient?
So let me put Cyient in a little bit of context, and that kind of leads to the question you asked, as well as the change that we are trying to bring in. We are a 27-year-old company. For 23, 24 of those 27 years, we've been an engineering design company. We've also been a public company for over 20 years, and it brings its own sort of pressures on our business. And I think the best example to use is, given our fellow panelists come from the aerospace or the aviation industry, there's one industry that we address and have addressed for about 17, 18 years. What we do is we help to design aircraft engines, we help to design avionics or the aviation electronics, we design airframe structures, we design interiors. So we build a reputation around design, but we recognize that if you have to drive new growth models, we have to change, and we use the word transformation sometimes a little too loosely. It's a very big word in itself. And what we're trying to do is to say that, look, how can we increase our value to our customers? And 3 examples of how we are starting to do that. It's just the start of what we think is a long and complex journey. But the fact that we design for manufacturing means that we've decided that we can all design as well as manufacture for our customers. So that's one change. Another change is, if we can design and manufacture, we can also create our own IP, components, small systems for our industries. The third, obviously, to your question, Dr. Chandra, is about digital. How do you infuse more digital into what we offer our customers, which is, whether it's engine analytics, it's a mixed reality for aircraft maintenance, and so on. So the change that, at a ground level that we recognize we need, and those are the conversations that Nam and I have, is how do you inspire entrepreneurship within the organization? It's quite important. How do we actually drive collaboration? Because of our structure, we can tend to become silos, within the definition of the organization. How do we, drive, again, a culture of risk-taking? Because it's important to try new ideas. Some of them will fail and should fail probably for the right reasons, but how do you get people to be? And to, I think Greg's point earlier, how do we take people out of their comfort zones? A 20-25-year-old organization that's done quite well at what it's been doing is good, but is that enough, for the long term, for the sustenance of Cyient, for the next decade or so? So those are sort of the change elements that we have to drive. Some we've started, some are working well, some are still a challenge for us, and that's where the relationship between strategy, the business, and HR becomes quite important.
So entrepreneurship, risk-taking, collaboration, those are your areas. And you want to add to that?
Yes, two things from what Joseph mentioned. The shift that we are doing from being a services company to also try and do manufacturing, from an HR and a people point of view, is a very different challenge. Right? When Joseph saunters in and says, "Now, what do you think about putting a plant for assembling some components?" We have to revisit the entire people process, the recruitment process, what kind of people we will need if we have to make that shift. So that's one. So the resilience of people systems comes to the fore. The second is the 27-year-old company thing that Joseph mentioned has an entire spectrum of people expertise. It has people who have kind of been developing core domains for more than 20 years. And then you also have, connecting to the earlier session that happened, you have about 60% of our think force, not workforce, is less than 25 years old. So how do you get both of these, the energy and the expertise together, is also a people challenge.
Yeah, indeed.
It's an opportunity, but it arises from a challenge.
Right. So you know how I felt that as though I went to a good five-star restaurant and I just saw the menu card, very appetizing stuff on your menu card. Now if I may push you to serve the food, let the audience know, therefore, take any one of those challenges, scaling up the levels of commitment, finding more pilots. I'm sure there's already ongoing work happening in your company in bringing about that change. Can you tell us some specifics of how are you actually managing this change?
I think Greg kind of alluded to iFly, our training and development center. I'll invite you to come and take a look at all that we try to do to bring in the culture of customer orientation and kind of operationalizing it. So customers, what do customers care for when they come and sit in our airplanes? Get from place A to place B on time in a hassle-free, courteous, and a safe manner. And these are simple things. As a customer, when I sat in planes, I did not even know what went in the background. And the training institute or the learning institute that we run kind of operationalizes every aspect of this, and that's not easy to do. And what can happen better is, can I bring in analytics? Can I bring in technology? And Greg and I were talking to a AI company the other day, and can I bring in ease of things? And one of the things that we are trying to do is, what are those things that within my function that technology can do that people need not be involved in doing? And how do you make sure the employee feels like a customer? And if you want to treat a customer the way you want to treat a customer, you need to be treated like one in the first place. And for that to happen, a lot of repeatability and reliability is important. And how do we use machines to do things in a repeatable manner? That's things that we are working on.
So training and use of analytics and technology. In your case?
In our case, what we've done is started a new program about 18 months ago. We call it the New Business Accelerator. At a very fundamental level, what it's trying to do is inspire internal, entrepreneurship. We attempted things like that in the past, but I think where we failed was, doing it on an ad hoc manner. So what we've done is we've taken a percentage of our budgeted revenue, it's allocated to NBA. There's a leader, there's a governance structure, and teams within the Cyient business units come up with ideas that are tested by an executive committee. They're funded, and then the whole intent is we can take them to market. So we've got about 18 or 20 initiatives that have started in NBA and are incubating or actually have moved to market. In fact, a couple of them for the aerospace and the rail industry have already been launched. What it's doing is quite exciting because, in a way, an organization is a network. The ideas don't come top down. The ideas come from everywhere within an organization. So when you sort of think of the organization as a network, you bring ideas, surface ideas, you empower those ideas, you give them, the tools, the investment they need to run with it. That's great. The other thing that we have also recognized is that we can't do everything ourselves. And one manifestation was that as earlier this year in February, we ran a hackathon, a pan-India hackathon. We called it Hack a Drone. That was inviting ideas from across the country, both from firms, from educational institutes, to come up with ideas that could either apply to industry or even in a societal context. We were delighted that the winner of that hackathon was actually an all-women engineering team who broke that glass ceiling on that occasion. They've given us the idea, and what we're now doing is working with Telangana Police to actually take that and make that something that actually helps society. So you can create a lot of things inside the organization, but you can also build, and I think it's extremely important to build an ecosystem, right? Where they're working with academia, you're working with fellow your partners in the industry. That's the only way to kind of be more successful in a world that's extremely disruptive.
So you're crowdsourcing your innovation in some sense?
Internally, yes. It's an internal form of crowdsourcing, absolutely right.
Wonderful. You have some thoughts further on that?
The
The audience would be interested in knowing the specifics of the change management.
when Joseph mentioned saying that we kind of made this shift, I'll kind of come back to the shift again. So there was a framework that he helped build with the CEO and senior leadership, and he will speak more about it later possibly. He called it agile, but each one, the AGILE, stood for a particular dimension that we wanted to push as an organization. And to also give you the context for our 27-year history, we just completed our 19th acquisition about 4 months ago. And then most of these acquisitions have been in geographies outside of India. So the complexity is not just about technology, but also being able to integrate the reasons for some of those acquisitions. Some of them are purely for markets, some of them are for technology, some of them are for the people domain that we would not be able to do in an organic manner. That is where I think the kind of, I would say the harmony between some of the people practices and the business expectations will be challenged.
So let me probe that harmony issue a little more, and that is the theme of today's session. At least in my experience, for a large part of the corporate India, HR is seen as a party organizing, feely, touchy place where people are sometimes showing the rule book and sometimes showing the paradise. And they don't trust this function. And I don't think outside the diplomacy of this conference room, anybody would say that HR function and the CHRO and the CEO actually partner in bringing enterprise change. And we are still exploring that against the popular perception that this second order function in companies is more about doling out compensation, doing campus recruitment, logistics, not necessarily recruitment. So that being the perception, I want to know from you, the horse's mouth, actually, how is this partnership working? Is there a partnership? And you don't have to say there is one, because I'm a human capital professor. If there is none, so be it, we will build it. But if there is one, I want to know, where is it today? How do you see the partnership between HR and your CEO agenda?
It's actually pretty, it's interesting that you asked it that way. When I came into this role, I have several direct reports in important areas. And what I pretty quickly found is that I'm spending more time with Raj than probably any of the others, because the issues that we face and that we talked about, the change in a growing company, and so many of these issues fall in the HR area. Everything from one, just a massive recruiting that's going on, literally hiring thousands of new employees, pilots, flight attendants, all these positions. That weight falls on him. The in his discussion about how we're operationalizing change, the training function, which is really sort of the heart of culture change in the company, reports into HR. And so that's another responsibility that we're pushing him very, very hard on. So, that portion of it, constantly looking for talent in particular areas, all of that falls back on HR. And so, we're, not that we don't have lots of other work to do in lots of other areas, but I would say there's a disproportionate share right now falling on the HR function, because it's, again, the point I made earlier about, the key to change really falls in talent and in employees and in culture. That is sort of the heart of the HR function. So it is a very close working relationship, and Indigo is very lucky to have a person of the caliber of Raj working with us.
So as a CEO, you see the most of the work is largely in the area of talent, culture, and employees. How is your partnership going?
Oh no, it's going great. I will say that for sure. My appraisal is not coming now. It's still a few months away, but I think we are now we have a brand new leadership, almost a brand new leadership, and we have a humongous plan ahead of the company. So I tell Greg, it's him, the CHRO, and the CFO. We are like a three-leg stool, and each of these legs are important for the stool to stand, just from a imagery standpoint. And it's important how we kind of use each of our priorities in a way that gets manifested into organization growth. I have a very simple example from my previous job. It's not so much an Indigo example, but an example in any way. Many years ago, Jeff asked us, HR, tell me two things that people will love that won't cost me any money. And
this is Jeff Bezos?
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, okay.
And we thought of a lot of things, and then we said, let's ask employees. And then they came with two things, and they went and introduced that across the world. One of them was introduced, another one wasn't. The first one was, let's wear an attire that we are comfortable in, and as long as it does not insult somebody else sitting next to me, I'll want to wear an attire and not be suited booted. And that worked well. A lot of times, we wore jeans into work, and if I ever wore a formal clothing like this, people would think that I'm interviewing for another job. So that we brought to India. Another one which we did in Seattle was people said, "Can I bring pets to work?" In the previous panel, there was about bringing a 4-month baby into work, and the pet I have at home and my 14-year-old son are pretty much the same, and we said, well, we'll bring pets into work. We'll let them bring. We did not define what a pet was, and to an extent, somebody said, "Can I bring my pet python?" Said, no, it has to be a dog, and Chandra, you'll be amazed. And I always thought American dogs were very, very well behaved as compared to Banana we have at home. Don't ask me why his name is Banana, but we adopted him, and he came with the name Banana. And these dogs have to be in a certain and as a parent, as a dog parent, you are responsible for your dog's behavior. Right. So Greg is not going to appraise me just on my performance, but on how well Banana behaves if I bring him to Indigo.
No, you are clearly extending the scope of HR beyond humans to animals.
Exactly.
And some people may be thinking, actually, they are not very different. Can we move on and see how does this partnership thing touch you at Scient?
So there's a couple of things that I work with NAMA on. One is clearly there's a new set of capabilities that we need to bring to the organization and bring that in quite quickly. Whether it's just the digital technology capability, or it's areas like design thinking, etc. But the other equally important problem we're trying to solve is how do we incentivize people. So after I think a long period of time, in the last appraisal cycle, we've kind of made a shift in our KPIs, or our KRAs as we call them. You're bringing risk goals. We've got to get people to believe that they can actually experiment, right? Bring a new idea, stress themselves, and that's a target. Because unless you do that, it's not that it's just a small percentage of the organization that can actually come up with ideas. Everyone potentially can. So, and the collaboration aspect, right? While each of us addresses a specific industry, there's a need for solutions that actually cut across, the business units of our organization. But how do you bring teams together? How do you create the work units to, collaborate and be successful? So those are the types of conversations that Nam and I tend to have.
Good, good. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to now hand this over to you. You must have noted that these gentlemen are driving change. At the heart of that change is the people issue. And in terms of how they are building a culture, how they are scaling a culture, how building the employee engagement, bringing a culture of entrepreneurship, innovation, and change all the time. So, find what you want to find from them. Please ask the question. If it is for any particular panelist, do also name him.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now opening the floor for questions. Let me just repeat the protocol for how you can send us in your questions. In your welcome kit, if you're from outside of ISB, you will find a schedule which has a QR code at the back of it. You can use any QR scanner app from Paytm to a QR scanner app. Scan the QR code and start sending us your questions in. And here I am with a couple of questions already. Our first question is from Mr. Tushar Sadhu. Tushar, if you could raise your hands.
Yeah.
So my question is directed to Raj and actually the entire HR faculty. I think Professor, you would also have a say in this. Is how does HR view a situation where a person is committed to the culture? So every other thing that the company believes in, he actually believes in the same, but is seeking out. So he's not in with the loyalty component. So is loyalty a component of HR? Is firm contribution? It used to be some time ago. I remember the generation of my parents, they would stick with the same job throughout, and that was a parameter that was looked at, right? Is it still the case because with the whole startup culture? And in the situation, do you think it fosters innovation to look at loyalty, or does it not?
Raj, all of you.
I think loyalty has been taken to a level that your allegiance to your company and your own personal desire to do what you want to do needs to be always on the same track. And I don't think that's anymore the concept now. I think the world is now going to times when you're going to do multiple things on the same day, and you're probably going to work with multiple employers at the same time. Now, some of the laws will change, or your internal protocol in terms of not working for competition. But I think people are going to now start doing work that they are more interested in than just continue, building their CV on with the same company. I think from a, you also talked about culture, and I think when it comes to culture, my view is good intention is not good enough, and the reason is, no one has a bad intention. Like if you get hired into ISB or into Indigo, you're all going to have great intentions of doing great things, but that's alone not good enough. And what is good enough if good intention is not good enough is, in my mind, what we call a way to get good intentions to work, mechanism. So if it is culture, if it is longevity, there needs to be something very compelling from a mechanism standpoint for someone to feel a part of it, so it can work. You need to put in. I mean, it's almost like a software code. It's a human code, but it's almost like you're programming it, you're codifying it in a way that you're not letting it for just good intentions and tall claims. That's my response.
You have any comment? Is loyalty still important?
Maybe on the lighter side, I think all of you heard our profiles. I don't think that makes us less loyal to the organizations that we have either worked for or that we are working for currently. I think Joseph is an exception. He's been there for a long time. But from how the systems are beginning to look at it, I think there are two things I would say. We are beginning to appreciate that a lot of people would come with their own priorities defined in life, one of which is also the kind of work that they would like to do in the short term, medium term, long term. Right? A lot of people come and say, I want to stay a communications professional all my life, I don't want to do anything else. At least in my industry. I think in Raj's industry it will be very different. Very hard for maybe a pilot to say, I will do something else, I don't know. But and there are engineering folks, and I think I have a colleague of mine here who is a specialist in her own field, who would stay in the larger part but does not stop them from doing something else. As an organization, what we are trying to build is at least have that dialogue when people want to change. We are encouraging people. Earlier, if engineering graduates came to us, we would get them to start signing up bonds. In some cases, we still do if there is a specialist input. But today, we are encouraging them to tell us if they have plans of going in for a management course. We're going so far to tell them, saying, if you are going in and doing an MBA, come back to us and do your summer project with us. So those are the variations of loyalty that we are looking at. Right? So I think I just want to leave it at that and say that it's not the old definition anymore.
So just to add, since you asked me by name, my perspective, loyalty is a word from the past, born in the feudal era, and usually is associated with loyalty to a person or an organization. Loyalty now will be to the profession. But the interesting implication of that is that even as you leave the organization, you have to be professional about it. So that means you take the responsibility to serve the notice period, to transition out your work and transfer the knowledge, and take responsibility for seamless continuation of work and knowledge. As you do that, you earn your right to be not loyal to the company, but to be loyal to the profession. And this is what HR people all over the world are increasingly looking for from emerging professionals. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you,
Next
dear
question.
panelists. The incentivization continues. Please send in your questions, and the best question unanimously decided by the panelists will win a Goki band and a notebook signed by all the esteemed panelists. Our next question is from Mr. Amit Saraf.
Hi, my question is to Joseph. So, crowdsourcing innovations definitely seems to be a wonderful idea to build on some of the new innovation. However, how are you taking care of, you being a design and innovation company, how are you taking care of the IP protocols? Is this were there any issues on the IP front?
Do you mean issues with IP that we create ourselves? Is that what you mean?
And then relying on the crowdsourcing.
Well, I think I just need to clarify the term crowdsourcing. It's not outside the organizations, it's inside the organization. That's why I said it's internal crowdsourcing, right? Maybe crowdsourcing is a pretty extravagant way to describe it. But these are ideas that are coming, think that given that I've been around a while in this company, you know, we tended to be an insular organization. We used to sort of think that we knew everything about our industry, about our markets, about our customer requirements. I think the more we got closer to the customer, we started to realize that, you know, we had capability to develop what they want. So to your point about IP, it belongs to Cyient. It's developed by a Cyient employee or a team of Cyient employees. So to that extent, you know, there is protection for what we take to market ourselves, you know, under our brand. So it is not crowdsourcing as in, you know, in a very external context. I'm assuming I understood your question correctly. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mr. Amit Ranjan Gupta. Amit.
Actually, I have two questions, not a one question. The first question is to Indigo guys. Like, if you see in India, if you go by train first AC or something, so its fare is these days a bit higher than airline. So don't you think like it's a airline is going in a height of price for, like, if you see the train which is commuting one person from one place to another place in 24 hours and with whatever facility they have, and some airline, low cost airline is commuting person in 2.5 hours, it's a logical to have a price less than that. So what is the reason exactly of that?
So, our pricing is really not based on what the charges on a rail transportation. Look, there's a lot of cost advantages that airlines have, and I know from a customer perception, one product looks, like it's clearly better and ought to cost more, but look, airlines don't have to maintain the air. Lines have to maintain rail. There's just a lot of cost advantages, and so we are pricing our product, driven largely by competition, but that competition is also has based on their costs, and we're pricing our product at a level that we think will be revenue maximizing for us, and will be at an adequate level to continue to support our business plan. And the fact is that air travel, the comparison you're talking about is not unusual around the world. I mean, it's not in the U.S. Traveling by air is typically cheaper than traveling by train for anything that's intercity. It's just a more economical form of transportation.
Thank you. Our last question for the panelists, ladies and gentlemen, is from Mr. Harith Pathak.
Hi. So my question is around RPA. So basically, automation is very prevalent, and bots are replacing anything that's very manual or rule based. So I just wanted to ask, how are your organizations like shaping their HR and shaping their organizational policies to accommodate this virtual workforce, in the future?
In aviation, there is not a whole lot of virtual workforce, primarily because it is very customer-facing, touchy-feely. There are some parts of our work that we can do virtually, but not the customer-facing ones. And I haven't seen a whole lot that I have seen in technology companies to use bots. For example, in fact, in my previous role, we had used Alexa to kind of answer a lot of employee questions. You didn't have to email in, you didn't have to raise a trouble ticket. All you had to do was, if you were a person working in one of our large warehouses or fulfillment stations, you went there to Alexa and asked Alexa a question. Tell me what's my leave balance, to what do you think the weather is outside, to what's going to be my shift pattern next week, kind of thing. There's probably an opportunity to do a lot more of bots where I am today, but I think right now our focus is building capability of technology and intelligence to get some of our regular work to be done more efficiently. We'll get to some of this in some time, but that's not my focus today.
So from a sign context, RPA is something that we can't ignore anymore. And there are projects where some percentage of what was typically labor-intensive work is being converted into, process automation. What it does is, it shrinks the life cycle of the project, it improves the economics of the project. And it's not necessarily displacing people, because, you can always reskill your workforce into newer areas. But RPA is something that, we can't ignore anymore, and we already started to apply it to our business.
So I know you announced it as the last question, but we didn't hear any question from women. And the session will be incomplete without getting the other perspective. So may I request anyone? Yes, there is a couple of hands there. Thank you, lady. Get up. Yeah, no, it's always important to hear the perspective.
Thank you so much. First of all, it's great to have two brilliant Indian companies represented on the stage. My question is, in a highly populated country like India, how is the HR functioning in companies different compared to the West? For example, if people just seem more disposable, right? Because there will be 20, 30 other people who are ready to replace them in the workforce. Yeah.
My view is all employable people are already employed. So it's not very different from most other parts of the world. You're still competing for talent, and there is more and more opportunities for all of us today. Pretty much, more than ever our parents ever had. So I don't think it's a disposable bunch of people that I can just throw off in a trash can and go get another pair of gloves so I don't get my hand dirty. No, I think it's as difficult as any other place is. You probably have lots of people. Like if you open a station in a smaller city, we could have 20,000 people coming up to be employed by us, and there can be all kinds of people. It all depends on what kind of skills you want to hire, and I think to that extent the differences are not very significant, other than just the volumes. The complexity still remains of who you want to hire, and you don't want to get down the path of thinking of people as being disposable. That's a great recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Hi, actually it's a wonderful session tonight, this morning, and my question is for Indigo. Are you actually thinking about using HR analytics mostly into your talent acquisition team or your learning and development, where you can use the data and assess the return on investment on the learning and development or any other performance measurement? So just want to hear if you have any best practices that you can share with us.
We want to use, certainly we want to be able to use artificial intelligence and machine learning in certainly our talent acquisition efforts, where you can bring actually down the funnel of people that you're looking at to higher than the thousands that you will hire at. And we have done, I personally done this in my previous roles, of how can you teach machines so the machine can then get more intelligent and bring in lesser and lesser people for you to be talking to. And that's something we are certainly keen on. And there's a lot of low-hanging fruits, if I may use the term, to be able to use your existing data, but when you're going in and opening a new place of where you want to operate in, rather than going and hiring other people internally, that can simply just go and pop them up like an internal LinkedIn. Another one that we heard, Greg and I, the other day, was no more are hiring managers focused on creating a JD. They're basically saying, can I hire someone like Nam or Chandra or Joseph? And then what it does is, it pops up Joseph's profile, and then the machine learning algorithm kind of actually scans across several media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and then pop up a list of 8 people that look alike. I mean, not necessarily look alike, but in terms of profile. And they may not necessarily be keen to do this work, but that's at least a population you can start targeting, and it makes your recruiter's effort much easier. Lots of plans, and I have a lot of support. Let's see where we get to. Maybe a year from now, I can give you real examples than what my plans are.
Thank you. So as we wrap up, one rapid fire question to each one of you. Could you quickly give one message? Most of our students would obviously be CEOs and CXOs in just a short time in companies such as you. And what would be your message for them as they brave and become the catalysts of change?
My one message would be, always do what's right for the company, and everything else will take care of itself.
Always do what's right for the company. Yes.
I would say, have a point of view, and don't be defensive, but have a very strong backbone to be able to say what you think is right.
Okay.
Rather than a message, can I leave them with a question or something to think about?
Yeah.
It would be, think about whether coming to the best place to work and being a market leader are synonymous or they're actually two different things. You can have a great place to work, but you may not necessarily become a market leader as a result. So the culture that you build in an organization as leaders it depends on, ultimately you want to have a sustainable business, but being a market leader and being a great place to work may not necessarily be the same.
I hope that distinction will blur over time, and market leaders would like to be best places to work.
Work as well.
Yeah. Okay. You have a message?
The high tech and high touch both have to go together.
high tech and high touch. Both have to go through. Thank you very much, and thank you very much.